said block everything out when I'm doing immediates. I don't do this on finals though. Because again, I want it to fit passive so that it doesn't hang up anywhere. Now, one thing you can do, let's say you were trying to create this as like a wash impression denture. So one of the things that you could do here is, let's say you know that wash impression materials typically need 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter of spacer so that they have enough space in there to capture detail. So you'll see when I'm on the add tool here, and I come down below so this slider here, this is your circle size, how big the circle is. And then the one below that is how much it adds or takes away depending on which tool you're on. But then I have this other slider down below here. So one of the things that this slider will do is you can put a value in this box here. And then whatever that value is what the software is going to stop you at. So if I go to add material now, I can only add up to 0.5 millimeter to the surface of the scan. So I'll show you that here on the ridge. So as I add, see how it flattens out? So now if I go and use my 2D cross-section tool on it just to show, here's that flat spot. See how it's 0.5 millimeter? So I could just add all the way around my scan, my arch, and then I would get a perfect 0.5 millimeter space everywhere. So I could do a wash impression in the entire denture. If you wanted to do that. That's obviously not something that you have to do. It's just, if you know maybe the initial impression was really bad, you could design a try-in denture, put a wash impression spacer in it automatically with this, and then when the doctor gets it, he knows to take a wash impression in it right away. I'm going to go next from here, and now we are in our smile composer. So up to this point, we've basically done all of our model, our mounting, our survey and blockout steps. And again, those steps on an actual design, when you're running through them on your own, you should only be spending 15 minutes on that whole first part that we just did. So if you think about boxing your impressions, pouring up the models, trimming them, mounting them, surveying and blocking them out, you're looking at like 2.5 days worth of lab time, right? So I just did all that in 15 minutes, completely digital. So that's, another huge time savings there. So now we're at the point where we work a little different here. So rather than having to put wax on a model and then set teeth in it, we literally are just working with the teeth. So the first thing you're going to want to do, so we're going to use the Dentsply libraries. So I'm going to go here to the provider box and drop it down. And there's a few libraries that you're going to want to look for. So these 4 here, everyone should have these downloaded. So the DS Digital, those are the original libraries. And then these HC libraries here, these are for the new Dentsply material that's coming out, that high impact material. So if you know you're going to be using that, I would recommend using one of these 2 libraries. If you're just going to use like a regular PMMA material, use one of the other 2 libraries. So I'm going to grab one of the new ones because I've not personally gotten to use these yet. So I'm going to grab Portrait just because that's what we're used to. And as soon as I do that, you see how everything's black here across the bottom? So the reason for this is because of the way that the libraries are set up. So when I come over here to the left, underneath my provider box, I'll see this Show Full Arch Libraries Only option here. I need to make sure that that is selected. So now all of my cards show up.
What if it doesn't show?
It doesn't show these libraries here, these cards. Do you have the Show Full Arch Libraries checked? So check that off and then you should see everything. Show up now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so choose the one of the just HC or library or something.
Yep.
And then check that.
Or does it show you what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, close hit the X there.
Digital,
Yeah. And then so
the regular one. That's something.
No, there are
still-
two 3D printed instances. Or is it the
So
same?
is anyone else's library showing up like
Digital
this with no cards listed? So over here on the right side of your screen, this up arrow here will maximize or minimize the card view. So you can see that. And then the one here on the right will minimize or maximize the entire box. So typically you'll want to see the full
click this
card
person?
view when you're picking the libraries. And then after that, I just minimize the whole thing so that I have the full design space.
You got click.
So most of the libraries
Portrait.
are going to be labeled up here at the top as to
Mine is
what
inside
type
the
they are.
portrait, so.
So with the occlusion. So this particular default one here is a balanced occlusion. So if I want to see what it looks like in the space, I can just hit the apply button. And then it's going to populate up there in the 3D space, and I can look at it, make sure size is good, see if I like the way it looks there. Yeah.
Will you only see the portrait library that is the same as the parameters you set for that, or are you going to see the whole library?
You're going to see all the libraries.
Okay.
We try not
Not
to.
just that specific size.
No, we try not to limit you in any way,
Okay.
because when you, for this particular case, I've set it up to where we're designing our own teeth. So
Okay.
let's say you have a library that you really like, but it's either too big or too small for the patient. It doesn't matter, because you can resize the whole thing.
Okay.
So I can see my library here. And one of the things I want you all to see when I look at this, see how it's already in a balanced occlusal setup without me doing anything. I haven't changed the setup at all, I've just applied it. So one of the things I always recommend when you look at the libraries is try not to change too much of the posterior, because you're going to mess up the balanced occlusion that the library came in on. Now, if you're looking for a different type of occlusal scheme, the gray box here, you can hit the arrows there, and you can typically find lingualized, balanced. I'm not sure if they have any other classes or not. But you can see as I scroll through, it's giving me the mold shape and the what type it is, if it's lingualized or balanced. And then when I drop down the upper anterior box, all of the molds or all the card selections within that particular 13E are available there below. Now, one of the reasons why the library is set up to where you have to show full arch libraries only is because they've linked the posteriors to these anterior molds. So when you choose the upper, it chooses all the corresponding molds for that particular upper. Anytime you want to change a library, you would just select that library again and hit the apply button, and it'll change out what was there for what you just selected. Mine just changed again. Does anyone have any questions so far about choosing libraries?
What's the 3D library? Do you have, are those also included?
Yeah, they're all set up in either a balanced or lingualized
So
occlusion.
you just choose the Dentsply IPN 3D teeth, and then you can't size them, I assume.
Yeah, you can size these.
No,
So,
but if you choose the non-milled one, they're
yeah, if you choose the like
Why is mine
Dentsply Sirona I
plain, not
IPN,
having the
in order form, you won't be able to resize it.
So you just pick the library that fits.
Oh,
Yeah.
because you clicked on individual
Here
choose.
with the designing, you'll be able to reshape and size things, so the size of the
Yeah, I
library
don't know why there's
doesn't
an
matter.
error. But yeah, when you click this, it will show this.
So let's say I like the way that this mold looks. I can then come up here and turn on my existing teeth with these sliders. And I can see my position. So if this were a wax rim, I would be able to do the same thing with it. But I can see where the original teeth were, and I can make my adjustments to the positions of these teeth. So the first thing I can see here is I need to come forward. So I'll bring mine forward. And because I did a good job of aligning that vertical plane and horizontal plane, see how my midline already aligns? If I wouldn't have got that right on, then it would have been off. So I would have to adjust that position as well.
I have a problem with an error coming. I can get the buttons for adjusting, moving forward. I have this.
Lower, just get rid of the lower molar.
I mean, I'm just really looking at this.
So amazing. It really is incredibly cool stuff. Yeah, I'm coming back on your flight, so we'll take taxi together. Yeah, 7:45.
Oh, for models?
Oh, really?
Keep going with it. Jump back through the steps.
Yep. Yep.
All right, we'll go together. Have one car. Tonight we have 7:45.
Yeah. For now?
Alright, so I positioned mine forward into position. I can see now that when I look at it from this view, I might be too narrow based on the positions of those two posterior molars. So rather than moving the individual teeth out, I can just take the green control point here and stretch it. I can also see when I look at it from a side view that the position of this last molar here is too far forward from this molar. So maybe I want to grab this control point and stretch it back. So now I've got mine sized about where I want it. now I've got mine positioned about where the teeth were. So I'm going to move on to this tool here. And this tool can be a little weird to use, so let me show you how it works first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my lowers, and I'm going to look at the view more like this. So I can see right here that my canine is too far out from the original canine. Now, it could be that the original teeth are a little crowded, but let's just say I was trying to follow this as close as possible. So if I left click and grab from this canine, I can pinch in my arch. Everyone see that? So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So this is how I can set my corridor for my look of the posterior. So now I'm more in line with the positions of the anterior teeth here. Now, I don't like to use this tool a whole lot because what it does is when you move things, it tries to snap things back together so that they're touching in the contact areas. So it can twist and rotate teeth that you don't want rotated. So you have to be really careful with it. So once I do it, I'll turn off, and you can kind of see how it misaligns some of my anterior teeth. So I'm going to have a little bit of work there in the anterior to get those back to where they're symmetrical across. But that's okay, I can fix that. So now I've got everything set in the anterior about where I want it. I can see I'm still over my ridge on the lower teeth. Upper teeth look like they're in good positions, but let's just say now I'm looking at it and I don't like the buccal corridor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the upper, and I'm going to look from this view, and then I'm going to switch to this tool here. Now, the main difference between this tool and the tool we just used is that this tool does not snap things back together. Wherever you move it is where it sticks. So I don't have to worry about that rotation or anything like that. But I like to use this more so in the posterior. So let's say I wanted to show a little bit more in the posterior corridor. So I'm going to grab from this first bicuspid here, and you can see I can drag this around, but it keeps the upper and lower teeth together in occlusion. So I'm not messing up that occlusal relationship. So let's say I wanted to pull it forward like that. But now that I've pulled it forward, maybe these teeth are out of alignment back here. So if I grab from the last molar, I can tip and tilt those in and out. So I can get that right over that ridge. Same thing over here. Position that right over that ridge. And that's why we use Pound's triangle, because I can see the zone that I need to have those posterior molars in with these lines. The other thing I can do with this tool is with the anterior. So if I look at it from a side view like this, and let's say I look at my previous, so I can see that my uppers right now on my setup are a little retroclined from the position of my previous teeth. So let's say I wanted to match that. If I left click on one of my anterior teeth, I can get these control points here. So the red and the blue small ones do what you would think it would do. It would rotate and move that single tooth. But the large red control points do something a little different. So if I grab from this one, this is going to move the incisal edges of the uppers out. So I'm able to tilt those outward. If I grab from this one, this will work the necks of the teeth. So, and it's doing all 6 of the anterior teeth at one time. So I don't have to individually move those. So now I've just really quickly repositioned those to where I want them.
Go back and show us what you can do the posterior.
The posterior? Yeah. So I turn off the upper scans, and I look at it from a view above the lower ridge. So I have to make sure I'm in this tool right here, this middle one. If I left click and grab from the first bicuspid, I can drag the whole segment around.
I do exactly the same thing, but the both sides at the same time.
you probably have symmetric design to work on. So when you do that, then you'll position it, and then if you grab it from the last molar, you can tilt. Alright, so now I can do the same thing with the lowers. So if I grab the lowers here, click on them once, now I can go ahead and tilt these in and out. Everybody okay with that so far? Alright. So now you can see because I tipped and tilted everything, I have gaps in between my teeth. So how do I fix that? It's really simple. So I'm going to go here to this tool. So this is my individual transformation tool. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just like when we set denture teeth by hand. I'm going to start from the centrals. So I'm going to come to this central here. I'm going to right click on it. Go to bring to mirror plane. It's going to set it right back against that vertical plane that I created. So I'm going to do this one now. So they're going to come right up against that vertical plane now. Sometimes you will have a little gap. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll click on one of them, make sure symmetric design is turned on, and then I'll just grab the blue and I'll pull them into each other so they touch. So there's no gap. I'll also take a look now and make sure that they're tilted the same way. So it kind of looks to me like number 9 is retroclined a little bit from number 8. So I'm going to turn off symmetric design and just tilt this one out a little bit so that they're on the same kind of plane. And then I can see that it tilted out a little bit that way. So I'm going to just kind of make sure that I get everything positioned. Once I get my centrals set where I want them, then I just work my way backwards and do this. And I stop right before the posterior, because I'm going to show you a different way to move those forward. So I'm going to continue around here. And I'm going to go to my lowers and do the same thing. And I'm going to look at the lowers and make sure that I have the same positioning here. And now I can see that it looks to me like my uppers are kind of too high. So I'm going to come here, turn on my symmetric design, just drop those down, do my laterals as well. And then just continue around, making sure that I have the right spacing here. So let's say I was happy with my anterior setup now, but I know I have this massive gap here from my posterior. So rather than trying to slide each individual tooth forward in the posterior, I'm going to go back a tool, grab this, and just pull it. If I end up contacting here and getting a space here, I'll just come in here and make sure my symmetric design is turned on, and I'll just pull this canine back. So then I'll go over here and do the same thing. And then one of the things I can see really clearly is my upper occlusal plane, making sure that it all looks flat, but it's harder to see the lower, so I'll turn off the upper teeth and make sure that I don't have a roller coaster going. So I can see here this canine is a little too tall. I also don't really care for the tilt of this one, so I'm going to tilt it forward a little bit. Back. So now let's say I've got my setup happy, I'm where I want to be. I haven't really changed anything back here in the posterior yet because I like the relationship of the teeth. So now what I need to check is the actual movements of the teeth. So usually I turn everything off but the teeth just so I can see things. And I'll go ahead and turn on the articulator. So the articulator icon is over here on the right. It's the one that looks like an articulator. And there are multiple different articulators that you can choose from. So you'll see right here that I have, this is the Cavo, but if I drop this black arrow down here, I have multiple other ones I can choose from. There's only two things that really factor into the one that you choose here. It's whether or not you've used a transfer plate to scan this in. Transfer plates only work on the lab scanner. And how much adjustment you want to do. So obviously if you have, let's say, a Stratus articulator, you want to use the virtual Stratus because if you've made adjustments to the condyles and things like that, you want to transfer them the same way into the software. So if I choose like the Ivoclar, you'll see that all the same adjustments are available from the physical Ivoclar to the virtual. And I can make adjustments to the Bennett angles here and the protrusive. If you have one that has, for example, the Cavo has an adjustable occlusal table, so you'll have a few more adjustments that you can make. Some of them have side shifts, some of them don't, so it just depends on what you want to use. But I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm positioned, just like if I were mounting this case. So I want to make sure that I'm positioned along this plane. Think of this as like a mounting table. So I want to make sure that I get it as close as possible. Now, if you were using that Ivoclar add-on module that I mentioned with that face bow, you wouldn't have to do this. It would already be positioned just like how it was mounted. Then I'll go up here. So up across the top of the virtual articulator box, there's three icons. You're going to want to use the rightmost one to go into the functional step. Now, let's say this case you knew you were going to need to open the vertical for the immediate, maybe the patient was over closed. You're going to want to use that opening and incisal pin section there to do that. So that's going to open it on a hinge, just like you would if you were doing it on a physical articulator. Some people we're going into this icon here and using this vertical opening, that's the wrong one to use because it opens them straight apart, not on a hinge. So steer clear of this icon altogether. I don't like to use it. Use this to open your verticals. So I'm going to go into this icon and go ahead and function. So because this is fully edentulous, I like to turn on guided by incisal plate so that if I have to make any adjustments, it doesn't just overclose. It'll hold it at the 0 position as it functions. And then I'm just going to go ahead and hit the run button there at the bottom left, and it's just going to run through and function. Now, I check it here for really one reason. I'm checking for interference. So I'm looking for any teeth that are causing everything else to disclude because this is a balanced occlusion. So I'm going to turn off or hide the virtual articulator. So anytime you have it on, you'll see a slider over here that looks like an articulator. That hides the actual articulator. And then I'm going to turn off the lower teeth. So all I can see is the upper, and then I'm just going to take a look and see. Most of the time what you're going to find, if you don't mess with the posterior teeth too much, you're going to kind of eliminate those as an issue, and it's most likely something in the anterior that is causing disclusion. So I can see I have a lot of heavy marking here on the centrals. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll go here to my lowers, and I can see it looks like I've got some heavy markings here. So maybe I'll come in here and I'll slide these teeth down a little bit. And then if I rerun the articulator, it'll show me what it looks like now with the new function. So now if I turn off the lowers, my markings are starting to get a little darker. So something there in the anterior is causing an issue. It could be the canines as well. So you can also look at the functions individually with this as well. Not a lot of people know this, so I'm going to show it. So let's say I look at it from this view, and we can see up here we have these hand icons. So right now lateral is turned on, and the other two are turned off. So I'm going to turn that one off, and I'm going to look at protrusive and retrusive real quick. So now if I come in here, and I see how when I hover over the incisal pin I get this red dot. If I left click and hold, see how I can move the articulator by hand? So I can slide it right up on those anterior teeth, and now I can take a look and see what it looks like in here. So I can see it looks to me like maybe those upper centrals are discluding everything in protrusive and retrusive. So then I can go ahead now and look at my lateral movements. So I'll take it over to one side. And then I'll take a look again and see what everything looks like. So it's a really easy way for you to check your excursions here to make sure that you're not causing any issues.